First of all, that hill is a lot steeper than it looks from the bottom. Now, listen closely. What's wrong with this encounter from the Dungeons & Dragons Heroes of the Borderlands starter set? Sword ferns. As you trudge through the mud, you tumble into a ravine of razor-sharp ferns. To continue, you must navigate this treacherous gully. On a failed check, the character takes 1d6 slashing damage from the ferns on their way through the gully. You can pause here if you want to read it again, but my problem with this encounter, and unfortunately with 25% of the set piece encounters in this booklet, is not actually a problem with this text. It's what the text is missing that I think disregards player agency by establishing a scene exactly like, surprise, you just triggered a trap. And I don't like to see that in a starter set because I think it both teaches a questionable lesson to new dungeon masters and is guaranteed to leave at least some new players feeling like, well, that wasn't fun. I guess I don't like D&D. So hey, I'm Bob. This is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and I promise I did not go out of my way scouring these booklets for objectively bad game design because I totally hate D&D and Wizards of the Coast. No, I sort of know the lead designer of this set, so I reached out to him for the official take on this design choice, which we'll hear at the end of the video. Furthermore, I'm reading this adventure because I'm running it for my group because I've loved all the D&D box sets to date. So later this year, I plan to publish a few videos as my traditional, neutral DM guides for this starter set. But today, we're specifically calling out this zero agency encounter design to talk about how it can work and to stop you from making the same mistakes, as the highest paid TTRPG designers in the world. Yeah, and I probably don't know any of them well enough to make a jab like that, but I think that's the one objective truth in this video, right? Oh, hey, Cozy Bob here to let you know that if you like how this D&D starter set blends dangerous dungeons and wilderness with cozy quests in the keep, you'll love today's sponsor, Legends of Akaroth. Inspired by the retro JRPG glory days, this tabletop game can be played as a solo journaling experience or with a full table. Explore a hopeful world of blue skies, hidden shrines, and deep forests just outside the village with a system built for clear goals and familiar turn-based action. Even this prototype copy of the book looks fantastic. I love the pixel art mixed in, the bounty of tables for events and world building, and how there's multiple modes of difficulty to tailor your game experience. Legends of Akaroth is already a smash success on BackerKit, but the campaign is almost over, so be sure to check it out through the link below today. Alright, please note this wilderness booklet from the new D&D box set is the recommended campaign starting point for beginner dungeon masters, according to the Read Me First Quick Start Guide. It features 4 wilderness regions, each with 4 set-piece encounters, and the way it's structured, any one of these 16 encounters could be how you start the game. And personally, I love this introduction. It says, lay out the wilderness map for your players to see. To begin, read the following box text aloud. Your adventuring party enters the wilderness. Mysteries await you in this untamed land. Where do you want to go? Yes, that sort of open-ended sandbox play is pretty much my favorite approach to fantasy adventure games because it invites the players to make interesting choices, to ask thoughtful questions, and gets everyone at the table to collaborate and discover the world together. Although, even I started this Borderlands campaign in the tavern because it's easier. Boundaries are helpful, especially for new DMs, and that's also why this wilderness booklet says the trail region functions as a tutorial with helpful sidebars. If this is your first time as a DM, encourage the players to start there. So these instructions do conflict a little bit, but whichever region you start in, you follow the same procedure. Read the description for that wilderness region, then roll 1d4 to determine what the characters encounter, or, quote, if this is your first time being the DM, run the encounters in the order presented. While I was prepping, I read all 16 in order, and the first half all seemed fine or fun. In fact, during the session, my group really enjoyed the bandit ambush, even though they've played through lots of bandit ambushes in the past. But reading the second half of these wilderness encounters immediately had me raising an eyebrow, and the last few got me calling over Grace World Destroyer in disbelief and deciding to make this video. Here's the first eyebrow raiser, encounter number 1 in the Fens region. So even a beginner DM could start here. Flock of Sturges. Your journey halts at a narrow creek bed stained with blood. Near the shore, a giant river rat lies dead in the mud. The carcass is shriveled as if drained of its bodily fluids. Suddenly, a flock of horrid creatures erupts from the reeds. Each has barbed, leathery wings and a long, sharp proboscis. Roll initiative. Okay, an encounter with monsters that are immediately hostile? That's not too bad. I know I've read, run, and written lots of encounters like that before, but these days, I try not to run or write encounters like that because aside from the temporary shock value, I feel that it's not particularly fun or interesting to say, surprise, you just triggered a trap. And make no mistake, that's what's happening here. Without warning, you're being harmed and the dice decide if you lose hit points. That's a trap, even if it looks like combat. And a really frustrating part here is how this encounter almost nailed it for me. The read aloud text gives the players not 1, not 2, but 3 interesting clues of danger nearby. Blood in the water, dead rat, exsanguinated rat. However, then the players are given no time at all to engage with the scene, investigate those clues, or prepare for the danger in any way before they are forced into combat. And again, immediately hostile monsters aren't too bad because at least once combat begins, the players can use their imaginations to steer the encounter in more fun directions. DM, can I try to bottle some of that blood from the river or wrangle another rat as an offering? Oh wait, no. These bloodthirsty creatures can't be reasoned with. The hostile Sturges fight to the death. In other words, surprise, you're being harmed, and the only solution is combat till one side hits 0 hit points. The Sturges are animals, man. Not even a die roll to see if they flee once they realize their new prey is putting up a good fight. And to be 100% clear, the reason this bothers me is because for me, the ability to try anything within reason is why I like role-playing games more than video games. So even more than a forced combat, that forced solution. That just grinds my little gamer gears. Now, fortunately, some of these encounters that I'm calling zero agency do give you some options as a treat. 2 of the others, including our initial example, force you into a skill check instead of a fight. Paraphrasing, you fall into a ravine of razor-sharp ferns, and you find yourself in a dead-end canyon when a forest fire breaks out. And you know, this really feels like Candyland or something, because you're supposed to randomly determine these set-piece encounters. You roll that d4 and, a 4? Doot. You fall into a ravine. Now make a check to avoid damage. Surprise, you just triggered a trap. Okay, but the nice part I mentioned here is that the GM text provides 2 or more options of skills to use, each with unique descriptions of how success plays out in-game. And as far as I know, that is new to D&D adventure modules, and I like it a lot. From what I've read in the Keep booklet as well, every skill-based encounter in the set follows that format. And this is a great lesson for new game masters, you know, except when you must use one of those presented options. But meanwhile, some of these skill-based encounters get it right, like Game Trail describes an elk jumping into a dense and thorny thicket as a voice calls out from inside, and here, the party gets to choose whether or not they want to enter the thorny thicket, then if so, make a skill check to escape unharmed. But obviously, they can choose to try anything, like just yelling to the guy in the thicket seems like a good first option. And another one, Pine Seeds describes squirrels collecting seeds in an area with both red seeds and green seeds. And you're really hungry, according to this description, so it presents the skill checks for identifying which seeds are safe to eat. But I'm almost positive my players would first try out, I shoot a squirrel, because pine seeds are famously difficult to forage and not known for satisfying hunger. And geez, I've never made a character who's red-green colorblind, but this encounter's a nightmare if you did. And you know what? As something of a palate cleanser, I now want to air my ridiculously specific grievances that no one else in the world will notice or care about because they're only regarding the ecological world building of the 4th wilderness region, the Tamarack Stand. Some quick background. Unless you live in the northeast or north central US or in Canada, you may have never heard of a tamarack tree because this name comes from the Algonquin Native American language of this region. But the tamarack has another name, the American larch, which may be familiar for 2 reasons. 1, multiple species of the larch genus grow around the globe, generally in colder regions, and 2, it's in the name of that one Sword Coast town from Princes of the Apocalypse, Red Larch. So what's my problem with the Tamarack Stand? Brother, I'll tell ya. Quote, forest fires are more common in this stretch of the wilds. Technically, yeah, tamaracks can grow in very dry soils, but they're known for growing in wetlands and poorly drained soils. Basically the opposite geography of this encounter where a sudden forest fire spreads through the dry canyon. Whoa, that's actually a helicopter, guys. That might be a first. And for my most pedantic world-building complaint of all, squirrels skitter about the fallen pine cones and pine needles that blanket the ground. Okay, yeah, technically, the family containing the larch genus is the pine family. But if they didn't know about the larch's habitat, they probably didn't know that either. Even still, that family contains every spruce, every fir, hemlock, cedar, and more. So just as they are not all called pine trees, you'd call their parts tamarack cones or tamarack needles, or just cones and needles also would have been correct. Unless the Tamarack Stand name is irrelevant and this area is actually dominated by pine trees, which would have also solved the soil moisture problem, and it's a miracle if anyone's still watching this video. Alright, before we get to the official response from the designer, the worst no agency encounter for me is another one from the Tamarack Stand. Giant spider's nest. You wander into a maze of thick webs camouflaged between tall trees. 2 massive arachnids descend on you with fangs bared. GM text. 2 giant spiders start combat, eager to make the characters their next meal. Some characters begin this encounter trapped in the spider's sticky web. Literally. You just walked into a trap, and one of the recommended solutions is burning the webs. So if you follow the instructions of this booklet, letting your players choose where to start, then taking the encounters in order, you could begin your first D&D experience by walking into the dead end and escaping a forest fire, then walking headfirst into webs where you may be eaten by giant spiders with way more hit points than you, unless you start another forest fire. I think my players would still mostly enjoy this for the sheer chaos, if nothing else, and as long as the players are having fun, it's all good. But anyone invested in their character would surely feel a little cheated by this, right? By having no way to foresee and avoid these dangers, and this frequency, 4 out of 16 encounters, surely teaches new DMs that you can regularly put the PCs in danger with no forewarning and with as little as one way out? Question mark? At least, that's my opinion on it, as someone lacking the actual playtest data and all the insider information that led to designing this box set. So, what's the insider reasoning here? I asked Justice Armand, the lead designer of this starter set, and now the game design director of Dungeons & Dragons, which is crazy, by the way, because the year I started this YouTube channel, 2019, he was just publishing 5e content on the DMs Guild. Time flies. So, after some preamble about the apparent lack of agency in that Sword Ferns encounter, I asked, while the players have options on which skill to use, doesn't forcing them into that trap disregard agency and teach DMs a bad lesson? My guess on this particular answer is that the damage is so minimal it's justified for a fun environmental encounter, but then there's others, like Giant Spider's Nest, where the PCs automatically/randomly walk into a web and could be more easily killed here. Last part from me, I can also see the general answer being like, it's just easier for new DMs, or the dice are the bad guy, so it's okay. But I'm curious to hear your actual take on this encounter design. And he graciously took time out of his busy day to say, your answer gets at the crux of it. It is indeed easier for new DMs, but I'll give you a longer one. You might already know this, but many aspects of the starter set were informed by super secret playtests. We conducted these with NDA'd groups at conventions and in more intimate focus group style settings. In both cases, we made a dedicated effort not to intervene, letting groups work through the material on their own wherever possible. These groups ranged in experience level, comprising tables of current D&D players and DMs, curious board gamers, and folks who had little or no familiarity with the game or brand. Continuing. Watching groups run their first game of D&D with in-progress materials was deeply informative, occasionally hilarious, and in a few rare instances, a little painful. We revised the set in real time, making component-level changes in response to observations and feedback. The tutorials at the beginning of each of the 3 adventure booklets were a direct result of these playtests. Okay, and here's the real juice. Perhaps surprisingly, when it came to traps, newer groups preferred a more direct approach with plain language and fewer steps, sometimes at their own peril. That philosophy threads the set as a whole. For example, when we could eliminate running text by merging it into read-aloud boxes, we often did so. That way DMs don't have to read, digest, then paraphrase that text back to the players. They just read it aloud once. Lastly, adventuring is dangerous. That's why we also baked in some DM mercy. In the first encounter of the Wilderness booklet, Prawl and the other less handsome bandits leave the characters unconscious but stable. And there's a call out in the temple within the keep about Fazir the curate waiving the exorbitant cost of resurrection for those he believes show heroic potential, which we all do. Heroes of the Borderlands was unlike anything we'd done in 5th edition prior. When it comes to a project like this, there's always a balance to strike and trade-offs to consider. I hope you'll consider that framing instead of calling it, quote, bad game design, winky face. Either way, we learned a lot from this project, and I'm eager to apply those lessons to future endeavors. Thank you, Justice, for taking the time to respond. For you, I put 3 titles on this video, and I'm letting YouTube Analytics choose based on performance. But in any case, I think we all appreciate this insight on how the D&D team playtests adventures, at least for this set, and it makes sense that while some role players might assume this is bad encounter design, new players and DMs, when observed during the playtest, actually preferred clear and simple events and outcomes, sometimes at their own peril, probably because that puts helpful boundaries on an encounter within which to test the waters of the try-anything mindset that I prefer. So when I started writing this script, I really did have a negative take on this design approach, but I'm so glad we were able to learn something that challenged at least my assumptions on what makes a good encounter. So remember to give this video a thumbs up, to check out our awesome sponsor. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments, and thanks as always to my patrons and YouTube members for making this possible. Keep building.